So after reintroducing myself to the fantasy genre this year and reading a whole bunch of other stuff, I finally did it, and I dove headfirst into The Eye of the World, which is book 1 of the Wheel of Time. Welcome for those of you that have not seen this channel before, and welcome back to those of you that have. This will be my spoiler-free and then spoiler-filled thoughts on The Eye of the World, because I think I have quite a bit to say about this book. Up front, overall, I liked it a lot. I think largely it was great, and I totally understand that this is kind of a foundational book to really get you introduced to the characters and the world, the magic system, and Robert Jordan's style of writing, which personally I loved. I had heard going into this mostly good things, but I also heard, the typical gripes of he writes really long descriptions and he can go pages at a time with, describing scenery and clothing, and I feel like a little bit it was overblown. Obviously the man loves his descriptions, but I think I can really appreciate it because he's honestly like the Bob Ross of fantasy writers, in my opinion, where he just has an idea in mind. It's like, okay, this is what I'm going to draw today, or this is what I'm going to write today, and here's piece by piece everything that I want this scene to look like, down to not necessarily single blades of grass, but I mean, there's a lot of books that you'll read where they're in a field or they're in the forest. I mean, everybody knows what that looks like. Robert Jordan takes the extra steps to really make it feel alive and really bring you into the world and exactly show you what he wants you to see, which is great for me because as someone who sometimes struggles with picturing things in books, I'm not that creative or imaginative myself. That really helped me kind of see the world through his eyes, like I believe he wanted us to see. And then you combine that with the many maps throughout the book that show you kind of where your characters are going on their journey, and you can associate the scenery, the setting, the cities that they're in, the swamps, things like that. He just did a fantastic job of describing all those things. And while some others I know have complained that it slowed the pacing down of the book, I don't necessarily agree. I can see what you're talking about, but I think because I enjoyed it so much, it didn't really slow the book down for me. Now, for those of you that are fresh to this book like I was, I did not really know a whole lot going into it. I've heard bits and pieces about The Wheel of Time, but I didn't grow up with this book. I didn't read it when it came out. I really didn't even know it existed until 6 months ago when I got back into fantasy and started learning about all these different books. And I was a little intimidated at first hearing that it's a 14-book series. Robert Jordan passed away. Brandon Sanderson finished it. But honestly, I've heard such overwhelming positivity towards the series that I had to just dive headfirst into it. And again, to address the Lord of the Rings stuff, sure, it might be a little derivative of Lord of the Rings at the beginning, but honestly, once again, I think that's so overblown because Robert Jordan, one, did it intentionally, but two, it's unique enough in the setting and even the story beats that are followed similarly to what's in the Fellowship. It branches off from that so quickly. I mean, this is roughly an 800-page book, high sevens, whatever exactly it was, depending on which version you read. And after the first 100, 150 pages maybe, it's really not the Fellowship. Like, I totally see the parallels of the Shire and the Two Rivers, the band of characters kind of going on this journey together. You have, a wizard character, you meet other races, things like that. Yeah, but fantasy is derivative of Tolkien. Like, that happens in a lot of books, and this is a 14-book series. I'm sure, after book 1, it already stepped away from that. So I have no, reservations on reading this because I think it's derivative of Tolkien. Like, I love this book. I love Tolkien. I love The Lord of the Rings. I really enjoyed this book. So it honestly was like a comfort thing to me because I was familiar with those beats from Lord of the Rings that it almost helped the story in a way. And this is way beyond what Lord of the Rings as a book was, simply because of the sheer scope that this is going to, how many words there are. Just overall, I enjoyed it, and I think a lot of the negativity that I do hear, or the comparisons to Tolkien, are a little bit overblown. I personally loved it. I ate up all of his descriptions. I loved seeing exactly what he wanted me to see, and I really appreciated that. So thumbs up from me. So briefly stepping into what the story is about, you start off with the prologue, which is amazing. The entire premise of the Wheel of Time, kind of the world going through this cycle of events with slightly different variations of it, and there always being, you know, a good versus evil. Evil's defeated, but something happens to cause the world to burn and kind of restarts, and you get this whole introduction of that, and that was super cool because it briefly introduces you to the setting, right? And I mean, the prologue happens thousands of years before the story begins, but I mean, it's not really a spoiler, it's in the prologue. The dragon, who is, you know, the savior of humanity, goes down, taking the Dark One with him, but also the world, and now there must be a dragon reborn, which, you know, is the name of the third book, and it's pretty clear who it is because it immediately runs into his POV for the start of this book, so I don't really think it's a secret, but I'll wait until spoilers to talk about it. What the prologue did very well, though, was kind of introduce you to the magic system and why it is the way that it is, because the Aes Sedai in this book, which are female magic users, they are the only ones that remain that are truly in touch with the one power, the true source of magic, and that's because the men were essentially punished by the Dark One in this prologue that explains to you what happened, where he kind of poisoned the well of magic. So while women can use it and be very powerful, men can use it and be very powerful too, but with a catch. They go crazy and they burn everybody down and kill people around them and kind of destroy the world. So that's not good. So clearly the ones that are left over are still the women, because naturally the men are going crazy and killing everybody and themselves. Just a couple of quick points before I step into spoilers. I love the overall journey. I like the band of characters that we meet. I enjoyed Rand. He's pretty cool. I see overall, I think, where his story will go. I'd be happy to be proven wrong, but I think it's pretty clear the path that's set for him at the start. I loved Matt for most of the book. I liked Perrin a lot. He has some super cool scenes that are really right up my alley. Egwene tagging along was a lot of fun, and her whole plot that she's about to go through is great as well. Moraine, who's the Aes Sedai, of course, is the Gandalf character, as everybody likes to say. She's super interesting because she's mysterious. You don't really know her motives. I think we're supposed to trust her. I'm not 100% sure. I do. And her buddy Lan, who's kind of like attached to her in a way because he's her warden. Because I'm just gonna kind of ramble a little bit. I like that Robert Jordan introduces all these different characters, gives them fleshed out backgrounds and stories, drives, things like that. And I love that the magic is introduced in this book, but it's not necessarily explained beyond kind of like a puddle of depth. So you know very loosely what it is about, but you don't know everything. And while things happen throughout the book, it seems to get more powerful as you go on without necessarily explaining it. And I think that's his intention. At least that's the vibe that I got from it, is that he's not going to just immediately explain everything to you, even though there is a lot of expedition dump and lore and things like that and descriptions. I think a lot of it is supposed to be mysterious, and that will grow as the books continue. So that worked really well for me. But back to the characters, like I said, Lan and Moraine are really cool. They meet this guy named Loyal, who is an Ogier. He's really lovable and kind of like a friendly giant character. I really want to see more of him. Who else? Tom Marilyn, the Gleeman. I have a feeling there's more than meets the eye with him, but I'll talk more about that in spoilers. And just some of the villains and, I guess, dark creatures that you meet in this book are absolutely terrifying. I did some Google image searches of just what they look like, or, you know, fan art, things like that. super duper cool, very terrifying. As soon as they're introduced in this, you're immediately kind of afraid of them. They're pretty terrifying to read about, honestly. Like the Murdral, I believe I'm saying that right. They're kind of like faceless almost, but they have really sharp teeth, kind of like the what is it? The mouth of Sauron, is that what his name was? Where he's got kind of like, he had a face mask on, but it's almost like they don't have eyes, but they've got like these really gnarly teeth, and they wear these cloaks that don't move in the wind, so like they're super mysterious and creepy. The Trollocs remind me of Beastmen from Warhammer. Just everything in this world is just super cool and like ultimate high fantasy, classic fantasy type stuff. I get a lot of like D&D vibes, just right up my alley. I loved it. So if I had any non-spoiler negatives, what I would say is certain things weren't explained. I felt like some things just happen. But again, that's a very small, kind of nitpicky negative, because I think it's intentional. I think Robert Jordan wanted to throw a lot at you and describe what he felt was necessary to describe while leaving the rest a mystery. And I can appreciate that, because if you learn everything in book one, I think it would almost take away from the rest of the journey. And I have a feeling that as this goes on, everything that wasn't explained in book one will be explained in the consecutive books, and you'll really get to grow on the introduction of, you know, characters' powers, how magic works, where these dark creatures come from, things like that. Because, like I said, a lot of things are thrown at you, a lot of names, a lot of different types of magic and things like that. I have no qualms with that, and I do think that it's going to get explained in the consecutive books, so I'm looking forward to that a lot. Okay, so I think that's gonna wrap up the spoiler-free section. I like this book a lot. If I had to rate it, I think I would give it a 4 out of 5. Obviously not a perfect book, not much is, but I did enjoy it a lot. I really like the foundation that's in place. I like the characters a lot. I think they're all going to have spectacular arcs through this 14-book gargantuan series. So I'm definitely looking forward to The Great Hunt, and I will be getting to that shortly. So stick around if you want to see spoiler-free thoughts, but otherwise, until next time. Okay, so spoiler thoughts. So obviously starting off with the prologue, the dragon, what was his name? Telamon? Lews Therin Telamon, dying, and then, you know, you're hearing about these false dragons, and it goes immediately from the prologue to talking about Rand. And by the end of the book, you know that Moiraine, I'm pretty sure it's obvious that she's talking about Rand is the dragon reborn. I don't know if that was supposed to be a secret going into it, but it seemed kind of like thrown at you immediately, like, the dragon will be reborn. Here's Rand. So I assume that he'll be the ultimate savior of this series. But I'm not sure if he'll go crazy or not, because obviously you find out in this book that he accesses the power, I believe, multiple times. I think he did it twice. He did it the one time to save him and Matt. He accidentally like shot lightning out of his hands, or I don't remember exactly what happened, to get them out. And then in the final showdown with Baalzamon, really called into it, because I don't know if he actually had his mom or if that was like an imaginary thing. I'm a little confused on the dream world thing. I felt like that was a little bit vague, and I didn't understand exactly how the two work. I assume it's like a Freddy Krueger type thing, though, where if you die in the dream world, you die in real life. I don't actually know if that's true. I kind of got that vibe. So I'm wondering if... Oh, I'm not even wondering. I assume we're going to learn more about the dream world and how they actually intertwine with the real world, which is probably why Moiraine was like, hey guys, if you have any bad dreams, please tell me about them, because she knows what's up. Speaking of the final showdown with Rand and Baalzamon, I don't buy for a second that the Dark One is actually dead. Or if he is dead, he's going to come back. Just like the Forsaken that you learn about, the Aes Sedai that, you know, went to serve the Dark One and were imprisoned with him. I have a very strong feeling that they're all going to come back and wreck some shit, because I don't think that kind of thing just gets mentioned and then never talked about again. I have a feeling that they're going to come back at least at some point in this. The Dark One is either going to come back in iterations of himself, or he's not actually dead, because I feel like you didn't really see him die. And speaking of off-screen character deaths, Tom Maryland, he's not dead. Come on. There's no way. he was getting super cool and interesting, and then he tells Rand to run off, like, I'll hold them off, and then he's just dead. No, I don't buy it. If I don't see them die, I don't see a body, they're not dead. He's coming back, and he better, because he's cool. I might have missed this, but I was a little confused about how Fades or the Murdral really control the Trollocs. Like, why are they kind of the generals, I guess, of the army? Because it seems like the Trollocs are like the meat of the army, and then there's these Fades, Murdral. Are those two separate things? They might be the same thing. They almost seem like generals of the army, and they're leading them, kind of like White Walkers in a way. With the Whites and then the White Walkers, it seems like there's like one per 100 Trollocs or something like that. So I would love to hear more or read more about how that came to be, and I assume that we'll get answers in further books. Some of the character stuff, like I liked Rand a lot. He's not my most favorite character. I have a feeling that he'll get higher up my rankings as the books proceed, but I think of the cast that we meet in this, he's kind of lower on interest level for me. I think Lan is super mysterious and cool. I really want to understand more about his bond with Moiraine and how that being a warder being a warder works with an Aes Sedai, because I didn't exactly understand their connection or how that happens. Like they can sense each other, things like that. So I assume that will be explained more. But I loved Lan. I was kind of caught off guard by the one, I know a bunch of people mentioned this, but the one scene with him and Nynaeve when he like randomly gets super poetic with her and was like, I'll be whatever jealous of the man that marries you or something because it can't be me. I totally didn't see why that happened, unless there's going to be some kind of like this happened in a previous version of the wheel, like another cycle, he remembers something, or there was for some reason they knew each other in another life. Or he can like read her. I don't understand where that came from. I have a feeling it wasn't for no reason or by accident, but it just kind of caught me off guard. But yeah, Rand was pretty cool. Obviously, Moiraine is super cool. I mean, she's an Aes Sedai. She's the wizard of the group. She has kind of unexplained powers. Like, her power level isn't quite explained yet. Obviously, she's going to be powerful. And it's really cool how she is so powerful and she can heal people, but it like really fatigues her. But the men go insane. So obviously, towards the end of the book, she knows that Rand has used the power, and she's worried for him and kind of like sends him away from her because I guess she just assumes he's gonna go crazy. But then she says, I found the Dragon Reborn at the end, to her amulet or whatever she was talking about. So I assume she knows that Rand has this power, will likely go insane, and probably work to help him not go crazy and defeat the Dark One and somehow break this cycle of, Dragon Reborn, killing the Dark One, but burning everything down with it. I have a feeling that this isn't going to end after 14 books with everyone dying. They'll probably find a way out of this prophecy or, turn it on its head some way. I liked Egwene. I assumed from the start that since she was introduced as one of their, good close friends, that she was going to tag along with the group and play a role somehow. I didn't necessarily think that she would be an Aes Sedai. That's going to be super cool. And I hope they go into depth with, her training with Moiraine or whoever she ends up training with in Tar Valon, and just really get a feel for what it takes to become an Aes Sedai, because I think that would be awesome. Matt started out as a pretty funny, cool character, and then in that midsection with him and Rand, it wasn't necessarily a surprise to me. Like, when the whole stealing the treasure scene happened, which, more death, by the way, terrifying asshole. When Matt took the treasure, I was like, okay, so he's starting to be kind of a dick and miserable and depressing. I was like, so clearly that either he's just becoming paranoid or like something he took out of there is affecting him. Even though they had the whole conversation with Moiraine and Lan, and they lied, but they kind of said, no, he didn't offer us anything, like we didn't take anything from him, but Matt took the dagger from the treasure pile, so obviously that was corrupting him. So for a lot of it, I kind of had that feeling of, okay, he's corrupted somehow, but it dragged down those scenes a little bit just because he was so miserable to be around. And honestly, the scene that he ends up taking the dagger, he was pissing me off because he's like, everybody has that friend that just gets everybody else into trouble. When you're growing up, there's always like, 4 or 5 of your buddies, you're out doing something, and the one friend is just like, come on guys, like, let's just go do this. It's like, no, we're gonna get in trouble, we can't do that. Yeah, but I'm gonna do it anyway. And then you have to go with them, and then you're all in the mess. So Matt, get your shit together, man. Okay. Perrin was super cool. I love that he's like a big dude and he's on a donkey. Get him a proper horse, please. Like, him and Rand sound like they're massive, but he can talk to wolves. That's awesome. It's completely unexplained, and I have no idea why it works or why Elias talks to wolves. I don't know if he's good or bad. I think he's good. Just leave him a good guy, because I love wolf communication characters type thing. That's super cool. And I really hope Perrin gets like a wolf companion. I love that. Let's see. Oh, duh, I forgot Nynaeve. Yeah, so the wisdom tracks them. I don't know how to feel about her yet. She seems kind of like protective of the group, but at the same time, I don't really understand her motives, because she seemed really driven by her hatred of Aes Sedai. But obviously Moiraine is like, well, you're probably going to be an Aes Sedai too. Like, I can feel your power. I don't really know between the two of them if they're both good, if one's evil, if one's not evil. I have a feeling if either one was truly serving the Dark One or something like that, the other one would have figured it out and called them out. I could be totally wrong, but I think they're both good. I don't understand Nynaeve's background or intentions. I feel like there are a couple things that weren't really explained, like who Rand's father really is, or like where he came from. Obviously, I know I'm bouncing around, sorry, but like his fever dreams that he was having after the Trolloc attack, when he was saying, he wasn't born here, or basically Rand is questioning who he is and where he came from. I really want to know where his dad came from, or like why he has that heron marked sword, which he gets questioned about a lot. So I have a feeling Robert Jordan is going to explain all these things that I have questions about. I'm kind of just brainstorming in my head and thinking things out loud. I thought Loyal was really cool. I was kind of not necessarily half paying attention, but the part in the book where Loyal is introduced when Rand goes to the library, and all of a sudden there's a Trolloc there. I was like, wait, what's happening? So like I jumped back up and reread it, and I was just like, oh, okay, it's fine. So he's awesome. He's just like that lovable giant that travels with you and loves lore and trees and wants to see this grove. I have a feeling that he'll play a much bigger role in the following books, and that's cool because I like him a lot. So now you've got, your human characters, you've got a wizard, you've got Lan, who I think is human, but I don't know exactly what it takes to be a warder, so I don't know what kind of powers he has, or if he's totally human. You've got Loyal, who's an Ogier. I'm guessing there's probably going to be a couple other races introduced, or is it all humans? I'm not sure. I would love to see some other like races, just fantasy things that were created in this world, and to kind of join the group, because that would be cool. The one thing that I was kind of confused about is what exactly is the Eye of the World? Is it like a place? Because it kind of felt like when Moiraine was saying, they need to find the Green Man, and they'll find him because her need is the greatest, and then they're saying they were looking for the Eye of the World, and then they were in the Eye of the World, but then it was destroyed, and the Green Man was destroyed. Maybe I missed something, or I skipped over something just without recognizing it. I wasn't exactly sure what the Eye of the World was. So if someone could explain that to me without spoiling anything, that would be cool, because I've heard that Googling things about these books is a huge no-no, because there's spoilers everywhere, so I don't want to do that. I just didn't really exactly understand what the Eye of the World was, so that would be cool if someone could help me out there. Something else I'd like to see explored, which again, I'm sure they will, is the Aja, just like the different colors and the variation of the Aes Sedai. I feel like that was briefly mentioned and then not really explained, because is it Black Aja or Dark Aja, the ones that are supposedly be serving the Dark One? I want to learn more about them, and red and green, and the different colors that believe that magic should be used for different purposes. I would love to see how that actually impacts the story, and hopefully that gets explained more, because I love the magic in the sense that it's loose enough that it's not a hard, scientific magic system, and it's loose enough that it's kind of unexplained right now. Like, you know that women can use it, you know that men can use it, but men go crazy for using it. You obviously know that Moraine is strong, but she gets fatigued. So it's like, what are the power levels here? Like, she said Egwene and Nynaeve could be insanely powerful Aes Sedai. Like, why is that? I would love to see kind of like how this all works together. So I'm really eager to keep reading and learn about that because it sounds awesome. I think those are the main plot points that I wanted to talk about. Like I said, I overall really enjoyed this book. I love the mysterious aura around everything. I love that you're almost kind of learning with the characters, right? This group of characters because they're farmers from the Two Rivers. They have no idea what's going on. They've heard all these stories and legends and things like that, and all of a sudden you have an Aes Sedai actually there with you saying, like, you guys are prophesized, or at least one, if not all three of you, fit this prophecy. Egwene, you're going to be an Aes Sedai. Nynaeve, you're going to be an Aes Sedai. It's like they're kind of thrust into this journey, similar to hobbits, and are kind of in over their head and don't really know what's going on. And I feel like that's us as the reader, because you're kind of just thrown into a lot of this, and not, certain things aren't explained, which again I think is perfectly by design. I'm just so eager to keep reading and learn what those are, because I am so interested and invested already just from reading book one, and hearing that the consecutive books are even better and they build on that. I don't know. I'm running out of words. Like, I'm excited to keep reading. Yeah, I want to keep reading this. I really like this book. The more I talk about it, the more I even like it, because there's so many things that you could probably sit here for hours and days and weeks and months and years and just talk about just little details that I've probably missed, or hints here and there that eventually pay off 7 books from now, or expanding the magic system, seeing where these characters go. Just everything about this just seems like such a cool and unique thing, and I'm totally on board for this entire series. That is going to wrap up my review for The Eye of the World. So tune in a couple of weeks. I will have a review for The Great Hunt. I'm going to be trying to do at least one a month, probably 2. I think my current reading schedule, I'm going to be working in hopefully 2 Wheel of Time books a month, so I can finish this in about 6 or 7 months, while I'm mixing in some other stories and books as well. I don't want to get burned out or anything and read, book after book after book and try to binge all 14, because I think that would be a mistake. There's a lot to think about in these books. There's a lot to sink in. I'm actually taking notes for the first time, really, for a book, because I don't want to miss certain things. So, like, as I, come across a character or something cool, I just jot it down in a notepad. But yeah, overall, I really liked it. Looking forward to The Great Hunt. I'm probably going to move around my reading schedule to get to it a little bit faster. So that is on the horizon. But until next time, guys, the wheel weaves as the wheel wills. Keep reading.